Okay, hi. My name is Tony. I'll be 81 in a couple of weeks. A year ago, I posted a video called Turning 80, and in it, I mentioned some things that might help all of us either have a better quality of life or perhaps even a longer life. There are a few areas that I didn't cover last time and I would like to cover now. By the way, I'm ably assisted by my younger grandson, and I want to give a shout out to my other two grandkids as well. I'm grateful to have three intelligent, interesting, and healthy grandchildren in my life. So the several areas I want to cover are medical, spiritual, and a positive mental attitude. So let's start with the medical. This may look like a deck of cards, but in fact, these are business cards from some of the medical personnel that I've dealt with in the last 16 years since I moved to Florida. I'm a firm believer in regular treatment and preventive maintenance treatment. Colonoscopies have revealed small benign tumors that were taken care of. The dermatologist has picked up pre-cancerous areas that were treated. Years ago, during an annual physical, my doctor detected a heart murmur. He said it wasn't serious at the time. A year later, during the physical, he said it had gotten louder and turned me over to a cardiologist. And then every year for 5 or 6, I would go in to the cardiologist, have an echocardiogram, and she was keeping an eye on my aorta. My aortic valve is the main blood pumper to the heart. And at the proper time, I went in for surgery and treatment, physical therapy, and that was 7 years ago. I still go to her every year for a follow-up. Medical treatment, it's important to have people that you trust and to follow their guidelines. So often you can find things before they get serious. Spiritual. Let's talk about death and the afterlife. Now, first of all, here's a fun statistic for you. I heard this the other day. If you reach 80, you have a chance in 4 of reaching 90. So what happens to the other 3 out of 4? Well, they're no longer with us. So death is going to happen, obviously. First of all, it has a practical aspect. I have a will so that my heirs know exactly what my wishes are regarding any assets and remains of my body or whatever. I also have a several-page document that I update a couple of times a year. This is what my mother did. I was her executor, and it made taking care of her estate so much easier. Everything, all of the doctors, any investment information, insurance information, anything that will help my heirs close out my accounts, even things like additions or improvements made to my house. I have them dated so that when the house is sold, people know exactly what they're getting. So this is something I recommend along with a will. Now that's the tangible part of dying. There's a spiritual part, and I'm not going to address that very much, except to say whether you're a believer in the afterlife, whether you believe that life ends at death, if you believe in the Christian version of heaven, whatever your beliefs are, I think it's important to be at peace with them. And that may involve, for many people, being part of a religious group. It might also mean maybe counseling or, talking with family, having somebody you can share those feelings with, because we all know it's going to happen. And it would be a shame if the thought of death or the concern of whether or not there's an afterlife affects your daily living. Which brings me to the third area, positive mental attitude. I have to tell this story. Paul Harvey was a nationally known syndicated radio show host back mostly before television came around. And he told this story, which I clearly remember. It involves luck and a positive mental attitude, or lack thereof. There's a story, which he told on the radio, of a guy, I believe in the Midwest. He was extremely depressed, tried to commit suicide, jumped out of a high-story apartment building or condo, landed on a car. Turned out the car was a convertible with a soft top that stopped his fall. He survived, but the occupant that he hit didn't. Turns out he had landed on his wife through the soft top of the convertible, killed her, and at last count was being charged with manslaughter. So first of all, the guy wasn't very lucky. He didn't accomplish what he wanted due to some bad luck. Also, he had, assuming, a pretty bad mental attitude both before and after his activities. So it's been a tough year. We've had pandemics and war and inflation and, all kinds of nasty things. It's hard to tell whether so much of the negativity around us that we see and hear is due to just increased communications, because somebody halfway around the world can hiccup and the news stories will pick it up and then blast you with it. So a suggestion I have is to look in the mirror and determine for yourself whether or not you are generally a happy person, or whether or not you've got a good mental attitude. By the way, it was my primary care physician that said, after looking at last year's video, that he thought positive mental attitude was an important element in his patients that are doing better than others, obviously. Now, it's true, you can get to a point where you have such chronic pain or restricted freedom of movement that it's very difficult to have a positive attitude. But for most of us, there are things that we can do, and they include minimizing the amount of negative news we hear. Instead of spending 2 hours a day on the newspaper and the national news, getting everybody's bad news all the time, maybe it's better just to minimize your association with that kind of news. And then the people you associate with, your family and friends. You may love them to death, but he or she may be generally a negative person that tends to drag you down. So we all need to be grateful for the things that we have as we have them. And I think that's it. I wanted to cover those several items. I don't know whether there's going to be a turning 82 video next year, but at least for now, I think I've covered the things I wanted to. I appreciate your listening, watching, and I hope you have a good day. Be safe and be healthy. Thanks.